Awesome. Thank you, Lucy. So we divided this panel into two sessions. We will start with the first session, but yeah, the idea is that in both sessions, we really want to hear from community leaders about some unique transformative GIS projects that really make a community impact and about tools, data, methods that can be used to empower the community with GIS technologies. So maybe we can start with you, Monica. So can you elaborate on how GIS technologies can foster resilience and equity in vulnerable communities? Do you have an example of a project in the DMV where GIS technologies have really been utilized to empower vulnerable communities?
Yes, and good morning, and thank you for having me. Well, when we're talking about vulnerable communities, oftentimes, there are a number of reasons. This can be in terms of infrastructure investment, it can be in terms of access to information and access to resources. And it's the latter two that we really focus on. And so, one of the ways that GIS technology can help quote unquote vulnerable communities is by giving them access to information, helping communities understand the challenges that they're actually facing, and then they can make decisions about what kind of resources they need and how GIS and information technology can help them. So I am going to show you, and I'm not going to do a spoiler because I'll have some more tools to show you later, but I'm going to pop a tool in the chat. I don't have sharing permissions right now, but for those of you all who pull this up in the chat, we did for the entire country, but we focused in on the DMV. And what we wanted to show was how people dually have to confront not having good internet access, so they can't actually see and interpret a lot of the tools that we make, and also the highest risk of environmental justice and climate change. And so what you're looking at is the 15 cities in the US that have the least access to the internet and the most environmental justice facilities. They're either designated an EPA environmental justice community of concern, or they have a brownfield that has not been remediated in their community or other environmental hazards. And if you zoom in on that, you can see that DC and Baltimore are two of those 15 cities. And so what we did was we made this map. Is quite simple, and that was intentional, was that anybody of any literacy level could interpret this map. And also it's easy to download and loads quickly if you're cell phone dependent, which is some of our communities. And so we work with them on coming up with a number of different solutions. So that's one example of how we can cross the information deficit when we're talking about vulnerable communities.
Oh, I need to unmute. So thanks, Monica, and we'll get back to it in a few minutes. Kendrick, Spatial GIS, which you're a CEO of, is a minority-owned company committed to fostering inclusive communities. How do you perceive the private sector's role in building resilient and inclusive communities? Could you share an example of a GIS project you've worked on that exemplifies the roles of the private sector and that you are particularly proud of?
Yeah, so thank you so much, Rand. So I believe that the private sector has a responsibility to provide opportunities without bias, fostering an environment that reflects the diversity of our communities that we serve. As Administrator Craig Fugate said during my time at FEMA, a whole community approach is essential in building resilience. This includes addressing neurodiversity, recognizing that the valuing of different ways people think and process information is important. Social economic diversity, ensuring that equitable access to resources and opportunities for people from all economic backgrounds are addressed. Cultural awareness, incorporating diverse cultural perspectives in planning and decision making, and education constraints. So, bridging the gaps in access to education and to skill development, race and gender equality, and promoting the representation of inclusiveness across all decision making. One project and initiative that I'm most proud of did not include points, line, or polygons, but include people. In 2018, I saw the need to amplify the Black voice in GIS. I organized the first Black in GIS special interest group at the Ezra User Conference. This event created a platform for Black GIS professionals to connect, to collaborate, and inspire each other, and has since led to the formation of impacted organizations such as Edge and North Star, while bringing greater visibility to our GIS programs at our HBCUs. This initiative demonstrates how to foster inclusive communities starts with an empowerment of individuals and creates space where diverse talent and perspectives can thrive. My closing thought is building resilience and inclusive communities is about ensuring that everyone has a seat at the table and the resources to contribute. And at Spatial GIS, we are proud to be champions by championing this by the values through both technology and advocacy. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you, Kendrick. So a follow-up question. Is there anything unique with the DMV region in terms of the private sector and community resilience?
Yeah, I think when Jeremy, when we first had this conversation about GIS, the GIS community, we kind of realized that the DMV is the heart of the GIS community. When you look at the federal space, you look at, even my career, I've started at the City of Lower, City of Baltimore, FEMA. All of those opportunities came out of the DC Metroplex. Looking at all the work that we're seeing throughout this GIS day, we are the epicenter, and to look at just the diversity on this panel alone shows that it's so important that we continue to do what New Light has decided to do, was to bring this whole community where we have, like in Maryland, we have Midget, we have Tugis, we have the Virginia, Northern Virginia GIS community. We have GIS meetup. So to be honest, I think that we are the mecca in regards to opportunities from the GIS community, with NGA being next door to us as well. So I think there's a huge opportunity in the DMV for us to foster great GIS technology going forward.
Awesome. Thanks, Kendrick.
Thank you.
Quentin, when talking about communities, natural disasters particularly challenge the resilience of communities. Could you discuss some of the recent innovations in GIS applications for disaster management, particularly those that support vulnerable communities?
Sure. Thank you very much for that question. So yeah, GIS is truly revolutionized how we approach disaster management, particularly within supporting vulnerable communities. Over the past few years, several of our innovative tools have emerged, or they've been significantly updated and improved upon, and they combine that geospatial analysis with advanced modeling to help us better prepare for, respond to, and recover from disasters. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stick some links right here in the chat, so that way hopefully they can be shared, and I'll kind of go down a little bit in those order. But one standout example is the FEMA Geospatial Resource Center. This serves as a publicly available centralized hub for geospatial data and tools, making critical information accessible to emergency planners and responders. It's through this platform that users can visualize and analyze data about disaster risks, impacts, and recovery efforts in real time, which is invaluable during emergencies. That also links over to Highfield, which is the Homeland Security infrastructure database, and you can pull in data from there as well. Another powerful resource is the Resilience Analysis and Planning tool. We also call it WRAPT. This interactive mapping tool, it brings together data on social vulnerability, community resilience, and critical infrastructure. It's really a kind of a GIS for people who don't have GIS. It's publicly available online, and it allows decision makers to identify areas that may need additional resources or planning before a disaster strikes, ensuring that most vulnerable communities are not overlooked. What's great about this also is that it's preloaded with over 100 layers that we find useful, but it also connects to ArcGIS Online in Living Atlas, so that way people can pull in other data sets as well. Next, the National Risk Index, or NRI. This is a central tool and data set for identifying risk and resilience of census tracts across the entire country. It also does it by county as well, but it provides a comprehensive look at community level risk by assessing 18 natural hazards alongside social vulnerability and community resilience factors. Within the NRI, planners can prioritize mitigation efforts, and they can also allocate those resources where they're most needed. For more detailed hazard-specific analysis, tools like HAZUS, those really come into play. It's a modeling tool that estimates potential losses from natural disasters, such as earthquakes, floods, hurricanes, etc. This is especially helpful for scenario planning, helping communities understand what they stand to lose and what mitigation measures could be most effective. Focusing more on community resilience, the Community Resilience Challenges Index, what we call CRCI, that evaluates barriers communities face in building resilience, such as your socioeconomic disparities or gaps in infrastructure. Pairing CRCI insights with geospatial tools enables targeted interventions that address root causes of those vulnerabilities. And then linked closely to this is the Community Disaster Resilience Zones Initiative, which that's a law that was passed, and it uses GIS data to designate areas that face high disaster risk and have limited capacity in order to recover. So these zones, they're really prioritized for federal and state support, helping to change up that cost share that communities have to pay for mitigation activities. And it aims to build resilience in those communities that need it most. Lastly, there's the Climate Risk and Resilience Portal, what we call CLIMER, which focuses on future risks. It combines climate projection data with resilient strategies to help communities prepare for your long-term challenges like rising temperatures, sea level rise, intensified weather events. So yeah, what's remarkable about all these tools is that they have a shared emphasis on accessibility and equity. Vulnerable communities often lack those resources or even the capacity to implement complex mitigation strategies. And so GIS helps to bridge that gap by offering data-driven insights in those formats that are easy to understand and act upon. By combining these tools or the data sets within the tools, we can really not only respond to those disasters more effectively, but also work towards a future where all communities are safer and more resilient.
Thank you for this. So a follow-up question.
Sure.
How do you envision the next years, the use of GIS for disaster management?
Sure. One of the things that we are, thank you. One of the things that we're really focusing on is making our data more granular and also helping to improve the accuracy. So one example within CLIMER is that the future projected data is right now using CMIP 5. So we're updating that to CMIP 6, which is the latest climate data. We're bias correcting it, and then we're taking it from 12-kilometer resolution down to 4-kilometer resolution. And this is something that we're really working across a lot of our data sets is to improve the granularity aspect.
Okay, thank you very much. Micah, you serve as the community manager of OGC. When we talk about GIS, accessibility of data is crucial for the success of any project. Can you talk about some of the challenges in making geospatial data accessible and useful to the communities? How do current trends in open geospatial data and technologies address these issues?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Ron. So I think there's a lot of challenges out there. I think the primary challenge is that GIS is difficult, right? This is not an easy discipline that we're all a part of. In fact, it requires a lot of specialized training and a lot of understanding of spatial concepts, which really aren't widely taught, at least within the school system in the United States. I never had a geography course until college. In fact, I didn't even know that geography was an option, something that I could study. Remember in middle school and high school, it was all social studies, right? Which is kind of history, sociology, a little bit of geography and some maps in there, but never geography as a specific discipline of study. And then when I started doing my undergrad at the University of Minnesota, I took my very first geography course and immediately loved it, and also learned very quickly that I could learn GIS and get a job after I graduated, right? So I think that despite the tremendous growth in geospatial, that's one of our fundamental challenges that we face, that we're pretty highly specialized, and a lot of people use geospatial and use maps, but don't necessarily do it in the best way, right? So that's kind of one of the fundamental challenges is communication. I think there's another challenge out there, which is one of the primary challenges that the OGC was founded to address, which is that you have different user communities, right? You've got your government users who are producing a lot of the data and are really, doing the important work to contribute to the greater good, right? You've got your commercial users, they have different incentives, and also commercial producers, right? Where they're trying to make profit and they're trying to really kind of get capabilities to be widely adopted. And they've got different incentives and different data requirements. And then, of course, you have the academic community as well, where people work on the cutting edge and are really thinking about what's the data that we're going to use 20 years from now and what should that look like, right? So the OGC really brings those groups together, and then through our consensus standards process, they all have to agree, right? And it's not always the best solution that's out there. In fact, usually it's not, but it is the one that everyone can agree on and the one that works. So that's kind of my take in terms of challenges. Ron, I know there's a second part to your question. Can you remind me what that second part was?
Yeah, how do current trends in open geospatial data and technologies address these issues? I think you covered it, some of it.
Did I cover it? Was that enough?
No, please elaborate. We have time.
Okay, so I think, again, from the OGC perspective, we're rapidly rolling out our OGC APIs, right? This really kind of allows us to leverage Web 2.0 and kind of the modern web architecture in ways that our older standards can't, right? So they're faster, they're lighter, they're more performant. So that's really what the OGC and all of our members are focused on. Ron, I know you guys just became members, New Light Technology, so that's super exciting. And that's certainly something that my job as the community manager for standards is to take our members, especially our new members, and say, here are the working groups you can get engaged with. Here's how you can help contribute to the spatial data infrastructure of the future through our OGC APIs. So we're doing that kind of in conjunction with the activities in our innovation program, where we're looking more at cutting edge applications, really focused on AI applications right now, how we can speed up the development and deployment of spatial data infrastructures by leveraging AI, and also looking at specific domain areas like hazards and emergency management, certainly one of the big ones, also focused on the marine environment and really kind of doing deep dives into those application areas as well. So yeah, that's kind of where we're going for the future and how we're working to address those challenges to really make geospatial data interoperable and make it fair, findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And that's really what we're all about. So I do want to have just a quick plug too. We've got our OGC Innovation Days event, which is coming up just after Thanksgiving, the week after Thanksgiving. I know that Guilherme will be serving on one of the panels that we're standing up, so that's going to be really great. And I'll just put the link in the chat to that event, if that's okay with you, Ron. Is that okay?
Of course.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
And I know that there are a few questions from the audience that we can get to when we finish this panel. So there are a few questions for you, Micah. Brooke, once we have all the data and complete our analysis, effectively communicating the insights to communities become crucial, obviously. Can you elaborate on the techniques and strategies that you are adopting to enhance community access to GIS data, and how your methods to translate complex data into meaningful and understandable information actually help making them more accessible?
Yeah, I'd love to. I am going to share, or I think I thought of this question breaking it down in, so first the accessibility, how can they get GIS data? Second, making sure that the communities know where this exists, or maybe even communities that don't know they need this data. So promoting it to our geospatial world. And then also that transforming part. So the first part in my experience is making sure the best access to GIS data in my experience has been building web applications and having these web applications show data in real time, using maps to visualize impacts or whatever the client needs for their specific problem, charts, are we able to see things over time? And most of all, we really have great experience. Our client wants to be able to filter and query the data and then be able to download their specific needs for their leadership, or just being able to navigate and explore. And yeah, so basically making sure that these web applications serve not only as this design piece that shares the information and transforms it, but they can also access the data in a more user-friendly way. They maybe don't even have geospatial experience. And another point I want to say on that. Oh, making sure these applications are mobile. That's another good way for accessibility for that geospatial data set aspect. Sharing wise is really important to make sure that all of these applications or even the unique data sets are in one location. So that just makes everything more accessible. It's easier to tell the community about, exploit data, and then we don't have duplicates being produced, if that's whether web maps or imagery coming from different providers. And specifically, I'm thinking for our clients in the past for FEMA RGO, so it's nationwide and also different partnerships and agencies. So having that one website cloud-based location is important. And then the best part is just like making sure our community knows where this data set lives. And recently, my favorite way to be able to promote that has been through actually using social media platforms such as LinkedIn or social media, because it's easily able to share where that is. And then also making sure that we talk about our research, how these models were built at conferences and promoting journals, making sure this work is published in journals, so that is also shared. Transformation wise, this is going to be a little bit more unique. Obviously, analytic tools are wonderful. We have public source, open source GeoPandas. We also have Esri. But I really have been loving using the platform ChatGPT to help me understand exactly which tools to use for specific issues. It's been really fun and really amazing and has exposed me to so much more. Specifically, been working a lot with analytic tools to transform big data. That's been a huge problem and a needed asset, and making sure we have the database and tools, as well as making sure we can share that in the right web applications and platform. And my last thing I want to using web applications on their own, the design, using human-based thinking design to be able to transform data sets to make sure we're meeting the audience need, the community's need, in an easy and understandable way. And that has been my new favorite research and really impactful on my work.
So talking about your work, can you give an example of a project that was particularly successful and why? A project you worked on in the last 2 years or 1 year?
Yeah, when I think of that system that I was talking about, the workflow of making sure we have a dashboard with a filter system, so being able to filter data by time, by state, by an attribute, and then the user is able to explore and then download, has usually been our FEMA clients. So OB3, MBOC, Lifeline dashboards, FEMA incident journals, and I think the last one we built was for the transportation and energy and specifically. We've also used this design, and it helped me more my human-centric based design applications for some census projects. And that was really fun to be able to focus more on demographic data as well.
Okay, thank you, Brooke. So finally, for this session, Pravin, GIS professionals are those who actually execute any GIS project. Over the years, you managed many teams and GIS projects across various sectors. Could you share the strategies you've found most effective in building strong, successful teams to execute these projects? You are muted. I cannot hear. Is it only me or?
I think he's going to dial in on the phone, Rand,
Okay,
just to
okay,
let you know.
sounds good. So in the meantime, we have a few questions in the chat. So maybe the first question is for you, Micah. What is OGC?
Thanks for that question. OGC is Open Geospatial Consortium. So we're celebrating our 30th anniversary this year. In fact, we're having a 30th anniversary celebration in conjunction with that Innovation Days meeting that I sent the link to over the chat. And we were founded basically to promote geospatial interoperability through design of standards and also through innovation and R&D activities. So a few of our founding members, I won't list them all. Army Geospatial Center, more specifically U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is one of our founding members. Esri is one of our founding members. USGS is one of our founding members, and National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, which at the time was known as the National Imagery and Mapping Agency, if I've got my acronyms right. I'm sure this DC-based crowd will call me out if I get them wrong, but they're some of our founding members. And we're a membership-driven organization. We've got about 500 members right now. Membership is open to anyone, and when you join, you get to participate in this standardization process and in our innovation activities and really push open standards and open geospatial forward.
Thank you.
Sure.
Pravin, we cannot hear you yet. Okay, in the meantime, maybe a question for you, Monica. How do you ensure that community involvement in your geospatial projects, and what methods have been most effective for engaging underrepresented groups?
Yeah, and so in our work, everything we do in some way, shape, or form is co-designed with the community. Either a community asks us to come and do some work. So, for example, we did some urban heat island mapping in Buzzard Point and Anacostia, and also an assessment of access to fresh food. And we mapped it out for them, and they asked us to do that work. Another way that we do it is we involve citizen science in our work. So, in some of the work we've done in Baltimore and in DC, we've brought in students, and I think one of my colleagues at the top of this discussion talked about how he didn't have the opportunity to take geography or be exposed to GIS as a young person. So, one of the things that we do is we actually teach young people in some of the neighborhoods where we work, or sometimes we work with returning citizens and other populations that haven't had access, and actually teach them how to use the technology and how to collect the data and get them involved in creating the narrative that's going to be told about their community. And the third way that we work with the communities is earlier when I talked about the communities we're talking about, I use the term divested more than I use vulnerable. And the reason why I do that is most of the time when we label a community as vulnerable, it's usually because of some negligent or intentional divestment of resources from that community, sort of like with redlining, or just through sheer not seeing the populations there, which happens more often than not. So when we work with a divested community, we actually share information with them and come up with policy recommendations and help them to be able to advocate for themselves to get resourcing. And so we're building a hub that's actually going to have a community forum as part of it so that people can go and interact with the forum either online or in anchor institutions to be able to have input into the kinds of things that they're advocating for. So those are our three ways. We either come where we're asked to come, we train and collect data together, and then we talk about it and help to advocate for resources as peers.
Great, thank you. Pravin, is Pravin back online or not yet? Okay, so maybe Kendrick, maybe you can take the next question. If you can share an example of one project that directly improved the daily lives of residents in the region.
Well, I would just go back to my days at FEMA. We developed the first mobile GIS tool at FEMA called the SMART tool. This was the Survivor Mobile Application Reporting Tool. I think it was in the hands of over 4,000 users. It was the first time that it was non-contractor, it was internal to us. We were able to, it started through Hurricane Sandy. We supported DSA. So basically, it was a process where people were going out and just knocking on doors that made no sense. So we use U.S. National Grid. We also use, at the time, this is the very first when ArcGIS Collector came about. So we put a Tiger team together, developed that tool. I think we went to the West Tornado to establish it. Myself, David Gluso, uh, David Lawson, and a couple other regional folks. We put it together, and I think before I left FEMA, I think we had like 4,000 users. It went from FEMA core individuals using all the way down to our reservists who range from the ages of up to like 60, 70 years old, and they understand the process. So, and I think that's has been an iteration of a lot of stuff that has come about at FEMA. I think that's one of probably one that I most ever hold my hat at because it hadn't been done. We got a lot of pushback from it, but had we not done it, we wouldn't have seen a lot of the cop stuff. Wouldn't see a lot of the web map stuff that you now see from New Light and many of folks who are doing GIS work at FEMA. So that would be probably an example. And again, we still here in DC. It came out of headquarters. So I would put our feather on the cap with that as well.
Thank you. Quentin, anything from you? A project that especially helped the lives of people?
Yeah, sure. So I'll go back to 2017. We've done a lot since then to make it even better. But in 2017, I was responding with Hurricane Harvey in Texas, and it was specifically around the substantial damage effort. So structures that are inside the SFHA, the Special Flood Hazard Area, that get 50% damaged or greater, they have to come into compliance because they hit that threshold. The problem was that we could only do maybe about 500 to 800 physical inspections per day, and so we really had to find a way to triage the situation. And so we were able to do this through GIS. Now at the time we didn't have access to building footprints, which would have made it so much easier. So we really had to work on centroids with parcels and try to figure that out and really kind of use a, definitely substantially damaged, definitely not substantially damaged, but really triage the ones in the center that needed to go get looked at. And so between using Army Corps of Engineers depth damage functions, creating a depth flood grid so that we understood where the flood was and where structures likely were, we were able to kind of bring down the potential need for how many physical inspections were needed, which sped disaster recovery and efforts and resources to the areas that were most need. And in the process, we were awarded the FEMA Administrators Award for Innovation. So now such processes are much, much easier now that we have things like the USA Structures data set that gives every footprint to every building and structure that is 450 square feet and greater. That's publicly available to everybody now, even within the Living Atlas. So this is an area where GIS helps to kind of take a really, really big problem and make it much more manageable.
Okay, so thank you for all the panelists in session 1.